Hi everyone. In this video, I want to talk about a phenomenon called underfill, which I think is an incredibly important topic to talk about when we talk about pregnancy fitness. It happens to everyone, but yet no one really seems to address the issue. I've seen so many books and courses that just don't really touch on the topic, and it's a topic that covers a lot of really important changes in your cardiovascular system in the early stages of pregnancy. So let's dive right into it. What often happens, and if you've been pregnant, you may have known this, if you were exercising before pregnancy, you may notice that your heart rate shoots up really fast and really high, and from really early on after conception, sort of like, a week in, or a few days in, and sometimes before you even know that you're pregnant. But what tends to happen is a woman continues exercising and she's like, what's happening? My heart rate's so high, I don't understand, like I've lost all my fitness already and I've only just gotten pregnant. And I think this is the most important reason to talk about this, is so that women understand what's actually happening in their body, and that it's nothing to panic about, and that it's actually a really natural process. So let's talk about the mechanism of this process called underfill. So what happens is, really early on from conception, the little cluster of cells that is growing in your tummy starts chucking out these hormone signals that cause your entire all of your blood vessels in your cardiovascular system to dilate really suddenly, pretty much overnight. So what happens is, if all of your blood vessels, your veins and arteries and capillaries all expand and dilate, what happens is that it causes the soft tissue, the soft muscle, the smooth muscle to relax, which causes all of these all of these blood vessels to dilate. If all of these blood vessels dilate, suddenly there's loads more kind of space in your cardiovascular system, but there's only the same amount of blood to fill it. So your blood no longer fills up your cardiovascular system. So it's kind of like, if you think of like a four-lane highway, and overnight they build another 2 lanes, but there's the same number of cars on the road. Then there's like more space on the road. There's more space in between the cars, and the cars don't fill up the road anymore. So this is what's happening in your cardiovascular system. So blood vessels dilate, blood volume stays the same, and so doesn't fill up the cardiovascular system. So what happens is that causes your blood pressure to drop, right? So there's more volume within the cardiovascular system, but now there's the same amount of volume of blood filling it, so blood pressure is lower. Your heart rate therefore increases, because your heart has to work harder to increase the blood pressure in the system. So even at rest, your heart rate is about 10 beats per minute higher than it was prior to conception. However, you don't really notice that when you're just sitting around. You notice it when you climb up a flight of stairs, or when you start exercising. And at that same level of intensity that you're used to, suddenly your heart rate is way higher. And that's because your heart is working. If you think blood, there's now kind of less blood in the system, or less blood filling up the system. I don't know if that's the best way of describing it. So less blood is returning to the heart. So the heart has, and less blood is being pumped out with each beat. So the heart has to work harder to get the blood around the system and increase the blood pressure to get the blood back to the heart. And we really notice this in exercise. It's really important to understand that this is really, really natural. It's healthy and it's perfectly normal, and it's nothing to panic about. It will make exercising harder. And while this happens to everyone, it definitely has some women experience it more strongly than others. If you experience it really strongly, my advice is just keep exercising, but just lower your intensity. You don't have to do what you were doing before if you were doing something like CrossFit or a HIIT class. But now you feel like the same amount of effort, your heart rate is going sky high. You don't want to work at that kind of intensity. You want to bring it down a little bit where you can still maintain a conversation, and where you still can kind of catch your breath, and your heart rate isn't just going mental. Now, it's really important to understand that your body does correct this issue. It takes about 4 months for your body to correct this underfill problem, and to create to create the kind of the excess volume of blood that it needs to fill the system, which is about 40% of pre-pregnancy blood volume. So the average woman has around 4 liters of blood, which means that you're going to create almost 2 liters of blood during the first 4 months of your pregnancy. That's insane. That's a huge amount of blood to be making. And the first thing that the body will do is compensate by retaining fluid, and kind of filling up that blood volume with fluid. But then there's more blood volume, but it takes time for the body to create all the red blood cells that carry oxygen. So even though it quite quickly corrects the volume problem, the blood is kind of more dilute in a way. So it takes quite some time for the body to then create the red blood cells to fill up the rest of to fill up the rest of the blood volume, and all the other stuff that's in blood. It's not just red blood cells, and this will take about 4 months. And by 4 months, if you continue doing cardiovascular exercise, moderate cardiovascular exercise, not killing yourself, not like keeping it around that kind of 6 or 7 out of 10 range, keeping it in a comfortable range, but you keep getting your heart rate up regularly, you will correct. This will help you correct the problem, and your heart rate will go back to pre-pregnancy levels, and that's something that they don't usually teach. Your heart rate will go back to pre-pregnancy levels probably for most of your pregnancy, until the final trimester, where it's been documented that some women then find that their heart rate drops even further. I found with myself and with other women that the heart rate starts to go up a little bit again towards the end of the pregnancy. So I guess that's just a individual thing that we need to watch out for and adjust accordingly. The important thing to remember is that first of all, is like, why does this happen? This happens for a number of reasons. One is to ensure that there's enough blood, increasing blood flow to the uterus, to the fetus, which is a good thing, right? Another reason is to increase heat loss and dissipation of heat, which helps us control our body temperature. We have lots of mechanisms during pregnancy to help us control our body temperature. And the third is kind of to have a cushion in the case of blood loss, in the case of, during birth or whatever, that the woman has quite a bit of a cushion there. If you do combine these changes to your cardiovascular system with cardiovascular exercise throughout your pregnancy, the effect is really similar to blood doping. So what they do in sport, or what they used to do in sport, is banned. Before an event, they remove like a liter of blood from the athlete the athlete then creates another liter of blood to make up for the lost blood, and then just before the event they inject the blood back into the athlete. This is an illegal way of gaining an advantage in competitive sports, but it is something that exists, and the effects on your cardiovascular system during pregnancy are really similar to blood doping. So if you do combine it with cardiovascular fitness throughout your pregnancy, again, moderate cardiovascular fitness, working at 70% of your capacity, not killing yourself, you're likely to, many women do experience improved cardiovascular performance after having a baby. Lots of runners, for example, improve their time 6 months or a year postpartum. So there's just something to keep in mind that when you're feeling really shit about the fact that your heart rate's getting really high now, and you're like, oh, I just can't do anything, and I just feel like disabled during pregnancy. In the long run, this is a really healthy thing for your body, and something that really it puts your body under a lot of stress, and your body has to work really hard to make these compensations. But in the long run, your health will benefit because of these changes. So to keep that in mind, keep that big picture in mind. Think about the long run, think about getting back into things postpartum, and don't let it stress you out. Just enjoy working out and feeling good, and don't feel any pressure to work to the same level that you were working before if you are experiencing this underfill problem, because your body is just working harder right now. The last thing I want to say is that this can be part of the reason why we feel lightheaded, especially when we stand up or when we go upside down. And again, by doing exercise, we can correct that problem. And it is a theory for why we experience nausea and things like that, although that's not been proven, and there's lots of theories around that. So I hope this was helpful and informative. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and if you'd like to know more about pre and postnatal fitness, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.